Hello and welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'm going to be telling you about what I read recently in the past 3 months. So at the minute it's the end of October, so let me tell you what books I read in October. If you're new here, I keep a reading journal which I show you the spreads of whilst also telling you about the books I've read the previous month. So here's what October looked like. I finished 3 books, all from the same series. So in total I read 1,860 pages, which is a bit more than usual because I just demolished these 3 books. So yeah, that averaged out as 60 pages per day. The first book I finished, which I started last month, was The Fool's Assassin by Robin Hobb. This was the 14th book in the Realm of the Elderling series, and it's marked the start of the final trilogy, the trilogy called Fitz and the Fool. So I didn't do a book spread for that book, but I did for the next 2. That book was a great reintroduction to where our characters were at. We found Fitz in his new stately home, basically, with Molly and her family. And towards the end of the book, we get to see the Fool again. As for the majority of the book, Fitz doesn't know where he's gone. He thinks the Fool has just abandoned him, and he's kind of happy about being his own person now without him. We also get to see how his daughter Bee grows up through her young childhood, as she's only about the age 10ish by the end of the book. I gave it 5 stars because I can't not give a book with Fitz in 5 stars. It made me really excited to read the next books, and I therefore just read the next 2 straight afterwards without a break, because I thought I just gotta know what happens now, as the first book ended on a bit of a cliffhanger, not knowing what was going to happen next. You wanted people to be together again. Yeah, that's the least spoilery thing I can say. The second book I finished was Fool's Quest, also by Robin Hobb, the 15th book in the Realm of the Elderling series, and the second in Fitz and the Fool series. That book was 757 pages, and I gave it 5 stars. I exceedingly enjoyed that book. Now, I can't remember if it was the second or the first book where this scene happened, but something happens where someone's introduced to the people as truly who they are. And that scene was so good. Like, you've kind of been waiting for this scene, for acknowledgement of what this character's done for 60 books, well, kind of, the Fitz books. And when it happens, it's amazing. And then the second book, we got introduced to them in the first book, but in the second book they really become their own. This new like set of characters, which was going to be hard to do, to mix these new characters in with these already well-loved characters, but I think it was done well. Such as Pearl, Lant, Shine and Spark. Now these kind of, 3 of them and Fitz and the Fool become this kind of little found family as they go on their mission to save Bee. We also get a kind of animal friend, which I feel like Robin Hobb couldn't not do in this book, though not a whip-bonded animal. It was slightly annoying that you didn't get to see the end of this kind of quest, but you soon realise this quest is going to span a whole for these 2 books, which is fine. I just want it to happen, which is why I just kept reading the book. Here's my spread for this book. I drew a bee in her little kind of like tunic-y thing. The 3rd book I finished was Assassin's Clay. This is the final book in the Realm of the Eldlings, 16th book, 3rd book in Fits of the Fool series, which I gave 5 stars, and it got the book of the month. This book was amazing. It's the whole trilogy is going, well, I can't, the 2nd book or the 3rd book is going to be on my list of best ever books I've read for sure, and I would say it's quite hard to get on that list for best ever books. There's probably only 3 or 4 books on there that I really think are it, and this is it. It is worth reading 15 other books just to get to this book, because you're going to be so in love with the characters, which Robin Hobb is truly a character-based storyteller. So if you're more about the action is a bit slower, but that's because we get so much time to understand these characters. I would say the first half of the book I was thinking, oh, why can't we just do it now? You know, I was getting a bit annoyed, and as characters from other series were being introduced in this book, it was quite a depressing story because things were going wrong. They weren't interacting in the way I wanted them to meet, and it was like, oh, is this how it's gonna be? But then, of course, Robin Hobb doesn't write happy fairy tales. She writes brutal, sad stories. And this is what it was for quite a lot. And the ending, the actual ending, I mean, it's so beautifully done. I wouldn't say it's sad, but it's not sad. It's what I wanted to happen. Though she really scared me earlier on when she said someone died, and then they hadn't. And I'm like, that was unneeded. It was unnecessary. It ruined me. But I'm not saying this in a bad way. I'm just saying it was like her last kind of like stab at you saying this, and it was really well done. Like brutal. But I'm so happy with the ending, which is a really hard thing for a book to do, is have a really good ending to a whole series, especially a series this long. But I truly believe this ended in the way it should have ended, and even the last line, so simple, 2 words in the last sentence, but that was it. That's great. That was it. That's what we needed. And just thinking about it, it's like, so precious. I'm so sad that I'm not going to be reading another Robin Hobb book, and there's not another Fitz story, but he needs a break. He needs a break. They all need a break. I really hope someone out there picks this series up and starts reading it because of what I've said, or I don't know, just start with Varsity Trilogy. Just do it. You've got to do it. But with the end of that book, it means that I have actually officially read my reading goal of 25 books, which is great. Here are all the book covers. 25 books complete, though I did leave space for 32 just in case. So I'm really happy I've now read the goal for the year. I don't always set an unachievable goal, I do set an achievable goal. And it's kind of just like, what do I do with myself now that this series is finished? Like, can another fantasy series compare? and I love any other character as much as I love those characters. I think that's what I've seen a lot of people online say, is that they read other fantasy books and just feel like they don't compare to it, and it's kind of ruined summer fantasy for them because nothing could be as good as that. Now that is quite dramatic. Maybe it is true, but I hope some of the fantasy books will live up to this. But I'm definitely going to have a little break from the depressing stories of Robin Hood now, and hopefully be something a bit more lighthearted next month. See you in a couple of seconds for books I've read in November. Now it's November, so I'm going to tell you what books I've read this month. So, here are the books that I read. 1,076 pages and 3 books finished. So the first book I read was The Impossible Fortune by Richard Osman. So this is the book spread I did for it, which I just wrote the cover because I quite like the look of it. I ended up giving it 4.5 stars because I'm just in love with all the characters in this book, and getting to be with them again after a bit of a gap was amazing, especially after the film as well. Like, I'm starting to picture them as the film rather than necessarily the people I imagine them as. It was really nice to see Elizabeth getting back into her detective murder mystery work, and how the dynamic of the group changed after the previous book. The story of the 2 people with the potential Bitcoin fortune, which is the Impossible Fortune, was really interesting as it started to like bring in even more like modern day potentials, if you can say that. Like, it's not just diamonds or a murder, like the murder involved some more modern day things. I would say I really enjoy the little like quips and funny bits about things that happen in real life, and I think the second half was more funny than the first half. Like, the first half maybe was a little bit too serious, but I understand how the characters might have been too serious, or the narration kind of was a bit more serious at the beginning because of the last book. There was a scene between Elizabeth and Bogdan where they talked about grief, where they talked about someone's chair and the person who normally sits on it not being there anymore, and I just thought that was like so well done. And this book tackles grief very well. So the second book I read was The Witness of the Dead. So the book spread I did for this was basically just getting some images and making it sort of like aesthetic collage thing, because this book was really descriptive, and I thought it was really, the mood and the setting was really spot on. So I ended up giving this book 4 stars. It's the second book in the Chronicles of Ozareth series. However, it's really the first book in a trilogy about this character. We saw this character in the first book, but more briefly as a side character. However, now he is the main character in this trilogy. As I said, this book was full of loads of lovely descriptions, and it was a perfect autumnal read for November. The main character themselves really focused on the little things, which made the descriptions even better because it's what they would have noticed. For example, just like them going to a tea parlour and getting the tea and describing the flavours and the people that they can see in this cafe. And I just thought that was really cool. The overall actual story was a bit of a murder mystery again, as he was finding out why and how someone was killed. As witnesses of the dead can like speak to the dead, basically. Like, they can touch a dead person and find out or see some things that happen to them. The main plot was cool, however, it was a bit sporadic, as it had to jump between this main plot and some little side plots as the character kind of got interrupted by things. And it was done because the character had to experience different things to be able to progress with this main plot. However, it did feel a bit interrupted, like we were forgetting about the main thing and suddenly moving on to this little other thing, and which were nice and they were cool and interesting, but it just felt a bit interrupted, hence why it was 4, not 5 stars. I'm definitely going to read the other books in this series at some point, and I would definitely recommend it for autumn. The third book I read was Enchantra. Here's the spread I did for it. I drew the Black Fox Umbra, the locket and some berries, and the ring. This book is a romantasy. It's the second book in the Wicked Games series. The first book followed Ophelia Grimm, whereas the second book follows her sister Genevieve Grimm. So the main character changing in the second book was a little bit different. I did want to read a book about Ophelia as the main character again, but I understood that they couldn't do that, to do this specifically and have a romantasy. This follows the trope of, I won't say quite enemies, but almost enemies to lovers, and forced proximity, fake marriage trope. So if you like those 3 tropes, you'll like this book. I ended up giving it 4 stars because I did enjoy it, but I did have some things that held it back from being 5 stars. This book follows Genevieve as she is forced into a fake marriage with Rowan. The tension between them is really good, and I'm glad they don't force any actual romance to happen between them until the characters are actually ready for it to happen. Though this book does take place every short amount of time, you definitely get over halfway before any real emotions start to show. However, this book did feel like it was a bit of a repeat of the first book, being trapped in it again and having to work with this mysterious man and end up falling in love with him. Which I guess if it works well, I'll do it again. But because it was the second book in the same series, it did feel a little bit like this is a bit of a repeat. However, it was different, and that's why it was still a good book. A repeat of a trope, but a kind of completely different way of doing it, and a still really interesting gothic setting. It does make me think, though, what third book, I think there's going to be a third book, and who that's going to follow, because we followed the 2 Grimm sisters, but hopefully it almost goes back to Ophelia, because I preferred Phantasma to Enchantra, so I do want to see Ophelia again. We do get to see her and Salem, but they're not like a main character, it's just a little bit near the end. I'm glad the main character did have a happy ending, however, I feel like the ending might have been slightly rushed. To say that this whole book follows not a very long period of time, and then the last bit follows quite a big bit of time, maybe that pacing could have been changed. And then the third book I started reading this month was A Christmas Carol and Other Christmas Writings by Charles Dickens. Yes, this cover is one of the beautiful Penguin edition classics. I really wanted to read this book in Christmas, so I started it right at the end of November. I basically read the first 2 short stories in this book, Christmas Festivities and the story of the goblin who stole a sexton. Oh, and the Christmas episode from Master Humphrey's Clock. So the first one, Christmas Festivities, was following this family at Christmas dinner, and it was a lovely atmospheric, descriptive short story about how the family all comes together despite how they've changed, and how everyone really looks forward to this day. But I feel like all of Charles Dickens' writing has a sprinkling of sadness to it, as they remember people who can't be there and aren't there because they've died. And I guess that's because of the time period this was written in, and that like infant mortality rate was high. So yeah. The second short story was A Goblin Who Stole a Sexton, which was a gravedigger and things every day. This book was such a speculative fiction book, and you could see clearly how this set up for A Christmas Carol as a story he wrote a bit late after this. It follows a sort of Scrooge-like character who isn't enjoying Christmas, as he is visited by a goblin, and he's transported to the Goblin King and all that kind of fantastical elements I really enjoyed. Like, I forget that Charles Dickens' Christmas stories are quite often speculative, because that's basically fantasy writing before fantasy and Tolkien era was upon books. And the third short story was the Master Humphreys Christmas episode, where we saw the main character of that story, I presume, visit a pub and made friends with a deaf man. That was quite a heartwarming story of true just charity and friendship, and just people being kind to each other. So it was heartwarming to see such a nice Christmas story, and I think that's really what he tries to bring across with his writing, and these three stories really set up for the Christmas Carol, which I've just gotten to. So I'll talk to you about the rest of this book and when I finish it. You can see though that I am getting through my goal, and that I did finish my 25 book goal, but I'm approaching 30, and that's mad. I wonder how many books I'll read in the next month, and if I actually get to 32, which wasn't a goal, but I just left 32 spaces just in case, and it's mad that I might actually reach that. And yes, A Christmas Carol is a book that I have read before, though I haven't read any other Charles Dickens stories. That is a bit of a reread, but I did it for GCSE, so it has been a while. But I actually really enjoyed it. A lot of people didn't, but I really liked the speculative part of it, and his writing doesn't feel really old and dusty. It feels like his narration comes across in the book, and he can make little comments throughout it, and the way that happens I found really interesting. So you'll join me in a moment to see what I read in December. Hi, so it's the end of the year, end of December, and I've got to show you what I read in the final month of 2025. I haven't quite printed off the photos of the books yet, but I finished 2 books this month, so I read 826 pages. The first book I read, which I did start last month, was A Christmas Carol. So I read the other stories and novellas in this book. I really enjoyed reading the actual Christmas Carol, as I find that was just the most nostalgic and well written. I enjoyed some of the other ones, but I found this one the best. I like the older ones better than the later ones. I like early Dickens. I preferred over late Dickens, so I gave it 4 stars. I think some of them were 5, but some of them were 3, which is why it came as an average of 4. So, I'm glad I read it, but I didn't quite enjoy it towards the end, just because I was like, I'm kind of over it now, you know. Like, I've read Christmas Carol, I've read some of the other ones, and now it's kind of it. Like the one about what Christmas is when we get older, and Christmas Tree one, it was just so descriptive and kind of more without a story. So those ones weren't as good. But Christmas Carol, what about the Goblin, and Seven Travellers was okay as well. So yeah, that's my thoughts on A Christmas Carol. Here's my book spread. I just drew Scrooge and wrote a little bit about A Christmas Carol because that was the main reason I read that one. The second book that I read was A Dawn of Onyx. This is the first book in the Sacred Stones series. It's a romantasy following main character called Arwen as she is forced into the enemy territory of the Onyx Kingdom. It's a romantasy, so I'm gonna say there's a romance between Arwen and another character she meets in the Onyx Kingdom. I ended up giving this 5 stars. Now, that was because I really enjoyed it. I didn't think the writing was amazing quality, but like say Fortune, I don't think the writing is amazing quality, but I do really enjoy it. I think the romance was done like quite well, and it made you wanted them to get together, and you wanted them to have moments in the book together, and you were happy when they did, and that's what makes a good romance. It's got a who did this to you kind of trope in it as well, which great. I wouldn't say it's enemies to lovers, but it kind of is as well. So that's another good trope. I'm excited to see what happens next in the series, and in fact I've now bought the second book, so I would definitely be reading that sometime in 2026. So yeah, it's a very enjoyable romantasy. It's a fun book, and obviously it's fun. It's fun. And then this is the spread that I did for it. Drew a dragon and a crown. I did kind of the colours that were on the cover. The final book that I read I started reading, was Hotel Avocado by Bob Mortimer. This is the second book in the Gary Thorne series, so I read the Satsuma Complex the year it came out. So that came out in like 2022. So that is a good bit of time ago, 3 years ago. But it did nicely remind you of the story in the first few chapters. I have been waiting for it to come out in paperback instead of hardback, hence why it's also been a while. I think this book was a great improvement so far on the previous book, which I gave 4 stars, I believe. So I thought the last book was fun. It really felt like he was reading you the story, and you could really tell that he kind of based the main character off himself, as the main character is a lawyer and Bob Mortimer used to be a lawyer or something like that. I think the characters are all really lovable in this book as well. They've all got such personalities, which really does come across. I also think the writing has improved quite a lot, and it's almost giving Richard Osman vibes as well. So I think if you liked his books, then you definitely will like Bob Mortimer's, as it is also crime. It's quite got funny little quips in it that just make you laugh. It's not like relatable per se, but you just can laugh at the characters and laugh at the way he described other characters, and that's cool. I think I'll probably end up giving it 4 stars, maybe 4.5 actually. I think I'll probably end up giving it 4.5 stars. I'm really enjoying it, which is good. So yeah, that's it for this year of books. I've read 30 books, and I'll be coming with a Evie's Choice Awards of 2025. I said 2024, then it's definitely 25. Soon, as I've decided already which books are winning each award. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this year of books with me and this video. I hope you like this video. So yeah, like, comment, subscribe and I'll end up showing you my full flip through of my reading journal at some point too. So I hope you look forward to that. How many books you read this year? Comment which books you've been reading and enjoyed.